I will join Ian's comment. Thank you very much for this very inspiring talks. And I would like to combine certain elements from them. So I will take global change as a fact, so as Stephen Chan said. And I will take the two scenarios you, Neil, mentioned. And then I would ask Steve to tell us, do you think that either scenario would change your conclusions?
That's a good question. Although it may not have sounded like it from anything I said, I'm optimistic enough to believe that if we choose the second of, was that the right order?
Yeah.
The second of the two scenarios, that we will be much better positioned to deal with the challenges ahead due to the evolution of the climate, but also the evolution of the human system. Some of the, we are all already committed to a certain level of, as you said, you will take global change as something that's accepted. We are committed, and each year that we delay taking more serious action, we get further committed to amounts of environmental change that will lead to a number of consequences we'd best avoid. And it's not a very profound answer, but I guess the extent to which our social institutions, whether it's the Antarctic Treaty or any other national or multinational agreement that, as Neil said, is resilient to those sorts of changes, the better position we will be to navigate through those times.
Okay, thank you.
We have some questions from social media, so let's get some microphones to the gentleman there and the lady in the white, and in the meantime I will direct some of the social media questions to our panel. First one being, how would it best be to deal with invasive species in Antarctica? Perhaps.
So there are a few perspectives, and one of those is first to take the decision about whether we think invasive species are something that we want to keep out or not. At the moment, I have a much less sanguine approach to some of our regulatory bodies than many of the panelists might have indicated, and some members of the audience. I think we're not doing very well in terms of our regulatory bodies. So, for example, we have annual bluegrass, Poa annua, is currently on the Antarctic Peninsula in several places, and nothing is being done to remove it. Nothing. And it's perfectly possible to do so. If we'd like to stop this from happening into the future, we have to take a decision and put it through the treaty system that new species that are clearly from elsewhere, from Europe, for example, will be eradicated as soon as we identify them. And for that, we need some surveillance technology and science to support that decision. But then we also have to implement decisions that have already been taken. And those are to do with biosecurity protocols that many of you in New Zealand will be familiar with. But those are not routinely applied across all programs and visitors to the Antarctic. So that would be the easiest step to take. We know what to do, but many of us are just not doing it.
Mm-hmm. More than one of our panelists talked about golf on Antarctica and it being a popular holiday spot. So what about the invasive species that is us, tourism?
Well, there are two answers to that. And the first is, I think, one that was very readily addressed by Neil, and that is if we have an additional annex to the environmental protocol that deals specifically with tourism and how it interacts with the other activities on Antarctica, we may be able to have at least a regulatory framework that will help us to do something about it. The second is a much more philosophical question that's been posed, and that is just what kind of world do you want to live in?
And lady in the white? Mm-hmm.
Do you think that under greater pressures in a carbon-restricted future, we will need to review how we assess the science that is going on in Antarctica, how we assess the quality of science in Antarctica, and how we make decisions as to who is going to go to Antarctica and undertake science there?
Okay, I'll go. Thank you, guys. I think... Did somebody from ESOC walk in? Yeah, he's there. I think we're doing that already, honestly. I think each program, I think we, for example, we have already, at least I would assume the majority of the strongest programs, the Antarctic research programs, they're already evaluated. You have to select the best research projects to go to Antarctica. And you have to go to so many processes. And we have various examples. Of course, the way we're doing it, I'm sure you can always optimize it. And you also have to look forward to see how can we improve those mechanisms. But I think in numerous countries, there's research programs and the best programs, the way we want to conduct it in the field. And of course, I speak more in the marine forum, because for us to conduct our research in the field, if you want to handle a penguin or an albatross or a seal, you have to go ethically so many processes to actually to be able to do it, that actually that system is actually quite good nowadays. There's a lot of ways to validate the science and the quality of the science that we do nationally. Can we improve it? I'm sure. And I think that will be a major problem in the future when non-party countries that don't belong to the treaty that will join the treaty, and how can we actually put them, joining those processes as quickly as possible. But I'm sure we can improve that system. I'm not sure anybody would like to add anything.
I'll just add something from the perspective of Ansari. We are already assessing proposals against what it costs to do the work, not just the quality of the science. But really, what I want to do is appeal to this audience to say, actually, we don't want other factors to dominate over the importance of the scientific outcome. So it's our job to get the message out about what the real value of the science is, so that we can get on and do that work. Otherwise, those decisions will be made based on other factors, such as whether or not there are good business outcomes from doing the work. So I think we've got a big job ahead of us to address that from this room.
Gentleman in blazer.
I'd like to ask the panel to look back from their unique perspective of 2065 and think, what was the single event or observation that finally convinced the totality of the world's populace that climate change had an anthropogenic cause? If it was an observation, was it one that came out of Antarctica? If it came out of Antarctica, was it one of us that published it?
You already did, David.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't think Texas agrees.
I think that data already has been collected. I think it's in the ice cores. I think the relationship between carbon dioxide and temperature back through glacial cycles is an unequivocal association. And I think that is central to IPCC reporting, coupled with our observations of carbon dioxide emissions going way outside the natural glacial cycle envelope of things is also a fact. And I think the last IPCC report was extremely good at clarifying those issues, and I believe there is an overwhelming political consensus in support of those conclusions. And actually, I think there is a public appreciation of this. I think our media, probably certainly in Britain, possibly in some other nations as well, have some questions to answer about how they are trying to report the science that's been undertaken. But actually, I think when the public starts to understand the issues presented in a reasonable way, that they are pretty good at accepting that. And I'll just reiterate that there's no serious political party that has that I know of, that has a staunch climate skeptic position. So I think the future of that debate is, well, I think it's true. I think the future of that debate is actually quite a positive one. I think there has been already that step change that you've spoken about. I think that's already been achieved. More work to do, of course, and we need to work hard at some of the issues. But I think it's something IPCC should be really proud of, in fact.
Steve?
I guess another way to think about it is to think back to the talk we heard on Sunday night, where the resistance, those who believe that climate change is not important or not caused by humans, that their point of view was well predicted by their overall worldview. And so the answer to your question is probably that no observation is going to do that, because it's not another observation or a set of observations that's going to change that worldview.
Mm-hmm.
And so a serious question for us as people that are interested in science, in climate science, is how is it possible to do that? Or what's, given that fact, or that observation, what is the best strategy? Just more science information probably isn't going to do it, so we need another approach.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd like to add to that, which is why I started the presentation saying that many of our questions will actually lie in the humanities. How do we change people's minds?
Mm-hmm.
But in answer to your question, David, looking back from our exalted position in 2065, it wasn't the science community at all, it wasn't the social science and the humanities. It was in fact the big reinsurers that refused to issue reinsurance to insurance companies covering coastal defence works and houses built close to the coast. So they stopped issuing reinsurance. And as a consequence, nobody wanted property in those areas. And as a result, everyone turned around and said, we better take some action.
Just one final comment from my perspective, from my exalted position looking back. I was very pleased when the Antarctic Treaty System actually stood up, took some ownership of the issue and began to communicate externally what they knew from the vast array of scientific knowledge to the rest of the world as a body, as a united series of governments, and began to communicate externally. That's what I would see